Children, welcome to our unit on World War II. Yay, we've made it all the way through World War I. Crazy how time flies when we're having fun, right? In this notes video, I'm just going to introduce World War II. What are the causes? How come it happens? And yeah, that kind of stuff. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty in the next notes videos. So here we go. One thing to mention when we're talking about World War II is the Red Scare. And another Red Scare happens later on in U.S. history when the Cold War happens. But this is the first Red Scare in American history. So basically what the Red Scare is people are scared of fascism and communism spreading across Europe, especially us as Americans, because we hate fascism and communism. It goes against everything we believe in as a democracy. So we have Lenin and Stalin in the USSR. They overthrow the aristocratic ruling family of Russia, who are the Romanovs. If you've heard of them before, they're overthrown and killed in a military revolt in 1917. So Vladimir Lenin establishes control with the Socialist Party, so socialists take over by promising to get them out of World War I. He promises to redistribute land to people, and he pledges power to a Soviet Congress so that people have a say, which doesn't actually happen. So his power leads to Red Scares across America and Europe during the 1920s. By 1924, Joseph Stalin had become General Secretary of the Communist Party in the USSR, and he consolidates control over the Soviets by using violence. He kills a ton of people during this time period. He uses forced labor in concentration camps. He gets rid of all of his political opponents, all of the intellectuals who might try to challenge him, all of his military opponents, basically anyone he saw as a threat. Even people who were innocent got thrown in concentration camps. And this kind of kickstarts the era of fascism in Europe. So Lenin and Stalin in the USSR, Mussolini in Italy, Franco in Spain, and Hirohito in Japan. All Red Scares. Whoops. Sorry, my remote's not working. All right, so with Hitler and socialism, so we have all of these Red Scares happening. So socialism becomes more widespread in Europe and just generally around the world at this point in time in like the 1920s, 30s. So after World War I, Germany is kind of beaten down by its opponents, right? The Versailles Treaty forces Germans to accept the guilt for World War I, pay reparations to a ton of countries in Europe, and they limit Germany's military power so that they can only have 100,000 people in their military and only for, enforcing laws and things like that. So political Democrats in Germany are blamed for the loss of the war, and that kind of leads to a political power struggle in Germany between the German National Socialists, who want to rearm Germany, get rid of the Treaty of Versailles, and improve the economy, versus the Marxist Socialists and Liberal Democrats, who don't have much support anymore after World War I, because they're the ones who were in charge during World War I and they lost the war and then had this awful treaty that doesn't benefit Germany in any way. So fascism comes about here. Fascism is basically a far-right political philosophy that encourages nationalism, so pride in your country. It encourages military might, and it supports imperialism as a way to expand a nation's success, so a way to display that nationalism. And they also generally have a leader that represents the state as a whole. So with fascism emerging in Italy, Spain, Japan, Germany is also inspired to encourage this type of government, and Hitler eventually gains power. So he had been, background on Hitler, he had been in the National Socialist Party after World War I, and he quickly rose through the ranks to become one of its leaders. He was sentenced to prison in 1923 for trying to overthrow the Weimar Republic in a military coup, which was the government at the time. And he failed, obviously, which is why he was thrown in prison. And while in prison, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, which I'm sure you've heard of before. It means my struggle. And basically, he talks about his entire plan that will unfold in World War II. He talks about how Jews suck. He uses Jews as a scapegoat for the problems that Germans are facing. And he talks about the economic changes that he wants to take place in Germany. And then after serving his prison sentence, Hitler continues to gain political and military support, and he becomes Chancellor of Germany. And then within a couple months of being elected, he seizes power and begins to kind of just eliminate his political opponents one by one. And that's how he comes to power. So the causes of World War I, or World War II, sorry. So other than, just Hitler being Hitler, the Treaty of Versailles plays a lot into it, which I mentioned during last chapter. So the treaty has very harsh consequences for Germany. And the Great Depression happening during the 1930s was not only happening in the US, but also in Europe. So Germany was being forced to pay these massive reparations during a time when they weren't really able to earn a ton of money. Their currency at this point in time became so inflated that Germans literally started using their currency as wallpaper to kind of patch up their walls because it was so worthless in their economy at this point in time. So fascism comes about as an idea in Italy and filters out across Europe, encouraging people to join the movement to be proud of their country and expand their economy, which really appeals to Germany. So Hitler promotes these ideas. Once he's elected as chancellor, he starts to ignore the Treaty of Versailles by starting to build a military and encouraging production of military vehicles and weapons and things like that. And no one intervenes because everyone is experiencing the Great Depression. So starting in 1936, Germany starts to expand their territory using their newly built military and technology by taking back the Rhineland from Allied troops from World War I. So in 1938, Germany annexes Austria and enters Sudetenland, which is an area of Czechoslovakia that was mainly inhabited by Germans. So they felt like they had a right to that land. And then the Munich Conference is held by Great Britain, France, and Italy, and they agree to appease Germany by giving them areas of Czechoslovakia. So they give them the land that Germany is trying to take over. And this appeasement was supposed to stop the Nazis from expanding further, but Germany just continues to expand more by taking over the rest of Czechoslovakia before invading Poland in 1939 in what's called a blitzkrieg, which means lightning war. So they do it very quickly. So their invasion of Poland is what kickstarts World War II because Britain and France are allies with Poland at this point in time. France reinforces their border along Germany, which is called the Maginot Line, which will come into play later. And then Germany attacks Norway and Denmark in 1940 and then advances on the Maginot Line. So by mid-June of 1940, Germany has entered Paris and the French surrender to them. So at that point, they had taken all of Europe except for Great Britain. So causes basically the Treaty of Versailles is too harsh. So Germany takes matters into their own hands, especially relating to Hitler and his fascism. The Great Depression plays a huge role in it because it creates this, like, I don't want to say that other countries don't care, but this lack of wanting to do anything about it. So yeah. And then this is a map of what Germany takes over by 1942. So all of the red area is what Germany has taken over by 1942 during World War II. And then German allies are in pink. So pretty much all of Europe, Germany had taken over except for Great Britain. And then these people are neutrals. So that is some background on World War II. Join me next time to talk about American involvement. Bye.